You guys have to respond to my questions. I can't just keep going back to me.
And back to you, Quinn.
Wait, no.
Wait, I'm not ready.
Hi, I'm your host, Quinn McKee, live at Grassroots Studio. Today we're going to be talking about the ecosystem and all the effects the fire has had. I have three special guests, Anna Coyle, Mia Seltzer, and Mr. Ben Godomsky. First today, for the viewers that don't know, I would like to ask you three, what is a watershed?
So pretty much a watershed is a system of like all the water that comes down to a certain area. So you can have watersheds that are smaller or bigger. So you can categorize it down smaller. So we have the Colorado Basin watershed, which is pretty much all the water that flows into the Colorado River and where it ends up. So that can be as big as California. And then we have locally the Roaring Fork watershed, which is smaller, and it's like the Frying Pan River, the Crystal River, and the Roaring Fork River.
And it's usually like in a boundary of places. So
it's
like the Colorado watershed would be like most of Colorado, and like the Roaring Fork watershed's only like a portion of Colorado.
And like it's just all the water that's coming down from like the glaciers and from snowmelt and rain and like all the water flowing down to like one stream.
And the watersheds, do we use the water from the rivers?
So, yes, the Roaring Fork, so we use the Roaring Fork, like the whole valley uses the Roaring Fork watershed. That's how we get our water. So like when the water comes down, so everything, when it smelts off Capitol Peak, everything, all those mountains, it goes into the Roaring Fork River, into the Frying Pan, or into the Crystal River, and eventually gets to our towns, because the Roaring Fork goes through Aspen, Carbondale, Glenwood, I think. So it all comes down together so that we drink it and use it eventually.
Right, and like in the Continental Divide, if you go to the western or eastern half, that's like on top of the mountain is where it all drops down to like one side. So our side all gets that side from the Continental Divide, and so we get all the water from the Roaring Fork River, basically.
I've heard today that you all went on an eco flight down at the Aspen airport. What are your thoughts on this flight?
So pretty much with the eco flight we witnessed, so this year I've heard that the rivers are about down to 5% of normal. So we just saw the effects of that on like mostly the Frying Pan River when we flew over Snowmass, and we saw that like there were rocks sticking out everywhere, there was little water, and we were just seeing the effects of that, like the wildfire and just how much it affected our area with the drought this year.
The wildfire was like extra like disappointing to see because you could see like almost all of Basalt Mountain like just totally charred, and what used to be like a beautiful green mountain is now like charred and black and is causing issues for the environment.
And so something else we learned was like the wildfire, you think like it's over now, it's done with, it'll take a while to regrow, but like so when the fire burns down, it burns down into the soil, and, like creating layers of ash, and ash can't absorb water. So when it rains, it creates a higher flood risk now, and we're already in a drought, so yeah.
And that just creates erosion, and it also affects the air quality, and we're also under, I think in Basalt, it's a stage 2 fire restriction, or water restriction, so like don't use as much water, and it's just affecting our valley in a really bad way.
What I thought was really cool was you could see, so you think Glenwood's like ages away, like we won't, what happens in Aspen doesn't affect Glenwood, but when you really go up in the plane and you like fly to Glenwood in 5 minutes, it really puts it in perspective on how close it is and how everything's connected.
You all experienced this massive fire. What effect did it have on the wildlife?
Well, I mean, now on Basalt Mountain, it's going to take, he said, about 50 years for everything to go back to normal with hunting, and like animals aren't going to want to go on Basalt Mountain now that there's nothing there. It's just black and charred up, and yeah.
Their habitats are going to be gone from the fire, so it's not really going to be a home for many habitats, and their food resources are going to be gone. And like, for example, a lot of the trees are going to be gone, so maybe like birds can't make their nests in there, and they won't have the supplies to make their nests. And yeah, so the food is also going to be an issue. It's just going to overall affect all the wildlife, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And has this fire affected our watershed?
Yes, because we were in a drought before the fire, and then we had to use a lot of water from like Lake Christine and the creeks and stuff to put out the fire or try and contain it. And so it's just like we used a bunch of our resources.
Yeah, so yeah, it just used a lot of money, the fire, and now next time, or not next time it rains, but next time there's a big rain, it's just gonna bring all the ash into the river. It's just gonna affect it in a bad way.
So this fire's clearly been detrimental to this whole town. The air's been very contaminated. And do you have any more input on this fire? How it started, how it's affected the lives of people here?
So what I heard when it started, it was the tracer rounds, whatever. But then they didn't think it was that big of a deal with the fire, so they brought in like a couple small planes. They did like 800 gallons of water, and then towards the end, what I heard what saved the town, or not saved the town, but like stopped it from doing any further damage, was they had to bring in like this gigantic passenger plane that held 20,000 gallons of water and retardant, which stopped it from going to the town.
I think it was also really sad for like on a eco sort of note, and like all the others and money note, it's really sad, but also for the people it was really sad to see like their town up in flames. Like at one point, if you stood at Whole Foods Market, you could see like an entire wildfire, and I think it was really like heartbreaking to the people that like put all their money and all their work into a house and whatnot, and then for it to be at risk of all falling apart. I think it's really sad.
And I just think that we weren't even prepared for like this big of a fire, because like we had to bring in fire rescue from like Montana and all these other states, and we just weren't ready for it.
Yesterday you all went down to the Roaring Fork Conservancy Center. What'd you all learn there?
So we went down on Friday, and it was just about what we talked about earlier. We learned about how that the wildfire can have short-term effects and then lasting long-term effects, being like now the mountain, so it can't absorb water anymore, so it's just going to flow down into the river eventually. And we had like a cool demonstration of that, where she had like this little like plastic town with like toys on it and stuff, and she would put like dirt on it, and then she would spray it with water, and you could just see that everything ends up back into our system. So it goes down to the reservoir, and then we end up using that water later. So like the more that can be done after a fire, like potentially like you like plant more vegetation on the place, on the where the fire happened, and like trying to stop debris from going into the reservoir all helps.
I really just learned that how a small bullet can just affect a community so hard. Like from a small bullet, you have unhealthy water, unclean air, ruining habitats, ruining homes, destroying everything, and just like that, like even like a golf course is destroyed. Like something as simple as a golf course that you would think like, oh, it can just be rebuilt. Like the amount of damage the fire did from just a bullet is just like really like eye-opening to think about, that just something that small can have such a big effect on a community.
And personally, like what I thought was insane is just how like fast it happened, and like we also learned about like the ground burning in like different fire temperatures and how that could destroy roots and like create erosion later. So like when you think the fire's over, like it's just a whole new case of problems.
Especially after a time like this, that the fire so deeply affected everything. What do you think the people need to do in ways of keeping clean with their trash and cleaning up after themselves and pets?
I think it's important that we keep off of Basalt Mountain just so we don't do any more damage. This time is especially important for the water, because we already have ashes going in there. You need to like clean up after your trash and really notice like what you're putting into the environment, because it's so hurt already. And if you're not doing anything, like the least you can do is just, I don't know, like in times like this, like turn off your water when you're brushing your teeth. Just simple things like that can really help Basalt in this time of like crisis.
Also, I think just staying off Basalt Mountain, especially because even if like they say it's not, don't go on it, and you're like, oh well, they always say that, it's really dangerous and you could like fall and really get hurt.
All this climate change has really affected everything, and when we went down to the Conservancy Center, we were told that a fire like this only happens every 10 years, and I think that climate change has probably affected this deeply. What do you think climate change has been doing worldwide?
So I think that the Lake Christine fire in general was blamed too much on the people that shot the tracer rounds, although it probably it was at high risk before they shot the tracer rounds. So maybe in past years, if they had shot the tracer rounds and there was more water and stuff, then it wouldn't have happened. But I feel like inevitably, then it probably would have happened eventually, just because of the dry conditions and the drought conditions. But yeah.
And the West Coast has been in a drought for a really long time, like a bad drought.
Yeah,
like not just in California, but all over.
Yeah, there's fires all over Colorado right now.
I've been told that in Aspen we only have a day's worth of water if the river and watershed system dries up. So we really need to use our water wisely. What's ways we could be doing this?
I think just following. So in Aspen, I believe, and Basalt, there's Class 2 water restrictions. So I just think using just like following the restrictions and not watering. I think one of the rules is like not watering during the day or something like that. So just follow the Class 2 water restrictions, and yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Like, take shorter showers, like Mia said. Just like even turning water off, like when you're brushing your teeth, it's just like so useful and like saves so much water. It's surprising how much it would save.
And everyone says those things, like turn off your water when you're brushing your teeth, like everyone gets those things, but those little things really can affect our water community. And it's really important that we keep our water alive, because we wouldn't be alive without water.
I agree. It's really important to keep our ecosystem. We only have one. It's much easier to prevent the problem than to fix it. So, wrapping up on that note, this is Grassroots Studio. I'm your host.
We're done.
See you next time.